Welcome to a reading of an unreleased script from the Brazen podcast.
In each episode, we tell the story of a brazen African woman in 3 acts.
Are we having technical difficulties?
Oh, what are your technical difficulties?
Who was it brought by? Oh,
That's the technical
I
difficulty.
see. So we have.
Here you go.
I'll drop the nice accent. So,
Behind
when
the
you write,
scenes.
you have like about 8 versions of a script. So I was looking at the wrong page. So I'm sorry. So I'll start again with a nice radio voice.
No. It's
I was
actually a layer. Was it? Do you have
This is the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, I'm holding the microphone so you can hear all the behind the scenes stuff.
That's the same one as I have. Got it. It's on your right. Gotcha. We're together?
Okay, rewind, pretend like you heard none of that. This is a special session where we erase all your memories. Everyone's memories gone for the last 30 seconds? I hear nothing. What?
Because they have no memories.
Excellent. All right, let's re-begin, shall we?
Okay, let's go.
Radio voice. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a reading of an unreleased episode of the Brazen podcast.
Brought to you by the LAM Sisterhood.
Stories like you've never seen yourselves before. I'm Laura, the L.
I'm Alea, the A.
And I'm Mora, the M. And today, we are telling the story of Fatma Binti Baraka, a.k.a. Bi Kidude,
Bi Kidude.
Bi Kidude.
the queen of Taarab and Unyago, the legendary musician and teacher Bi Kidude, Zanzibar-born, singing to sold-out audiences worldwide at over 100 years old.
A brazen woman whose life story has been told in so many ways by so many people.
But her story can't be told enough. So this is us telling it our lamb way.
Act 1. Passion and depth. She could not wait to leave her mother's womb. For Bi Kidude, it was simple. Her soul knew what to do. So, she was born early and tiny. So tiny, in fact, that when her uncle came to visit, he almost sat on her. There's a baby there, her mother cried. Oh, Kidude, this tiny thing. And that's how Fatma Baraka became lovingly known as Bi Kidude. For Bi Kidude, it was simple. Her soul knew what to do, so she stayed tiny. And it was because she was so tiny that she could stay hidden that first time she heard Siti Binti Saad sing. A guest had come home, and of course her mother told her, "We, Kidude, peleke huyu kwa Siti." She took the guest to Siti's house. The band was already playing. Oh, she loved to listen to her uncle play the kinanda. But it was the udi that drew her in. Then the violin, dumbaki, mirwas, ganuni, my God! And Bi Kidude, feet dangling above the ground, lost herself in the music. Then a note. Siti Binti Saad's voice soaked in divinity. And Bi Kidude awoke. Her 10-year-old heart remembered what it was on this earth to do, even though it was not expected of her. For Bi Kidude, it was simple. Her soul. So she followed the music. The second time, Bi Kidude heard Siti Binti Saad sing. She watched her seated, cross-legged on the green and red mkeka, palms banging, a leather drum clutched to her chest. Her face was covered by a white cloth. And when she sang, her soul skipped into the sky. When Bi Kidude was discovered, her mother beat her for skipping madrasa. For Bi Kidude, it was simple. Her soul knew what to do. She had to follow the music. The third time Bi Kidude heard Siti Binti Saad, I imagine they sat together on the rolled out red and green mkeka in Siti's home. Siti was born with the name Tumwa, slave, but now they call her Siti, singer. She knew how to be free. And from Siti, Bi learned the songs. She learned how to breathe. Then, Columbia Records invited Siti Binti Saad to record her own music album in India, the first East African woman ever to record an album. So Siti left, and Bi was left alone. For Bi Kidude, it was simple. Her soul knew what to do. She would follow the music. The fourth time, Bi Kidude heard Siti Binti Saad sing. The voice was coming out of her own mouth. Imagine, Bi Kidude, this tiny figure, backed up by a troupe of musicians on the jahazi of rich Arab merchants, holding on to the gold railings as it rocked on the ocean. Bi dressed like a boy to avoid the eyes of men, people who didn't speak the same language, but everybody loved a song. And when Bi Kidude sang, her soul skipped into the sky. Imagine Bi Kidude, this audacious 10-year-old, backed up by a troupe of musicians on the jahazi of rich Arab merchants, having skipped madrasa and dressed like a boy. This was too much. So before she could catch her breath, she was married off. For Bi Kidude, it was simple. Her soul knew what to do. Some say it was a moonlit night. Others say Siti whispered in her ear, "It is time." Whatever some say, we do know that before the henna had faded, she escaped. With every step she ran, she sang. Her voice grew louder and stronger, her soul skipping beside her. People don't understand how important it is to do what makes you happy and what makes you free. For years, Bi Kidude walked barefoot across what is now called Tanzania, offering her skills as a herbalist, treating asthma, teaching people how to breathe, and singing, always singing. She was free. Then in 1950, Siti Binti Saad's voice called her home. When Bi Kidude arrived into the market, I imagine she sang to let Siti know she was here. And when they saw her soul skipping into the sky, people were shocked. Subhanallah, Siti amefufuka. She has returned from the dead. Bi Kidude was shocked. Siti was dead? But this voice, this has to be Siti. Show us who you are, the people demanded. Show us you are not Siti Binti Saad. For Bi Kidude, it was simple. Her soul knew what to do. She threw off the white cloth covering her face. She said, "It is me, Jiomimi Bi Kidude. Look at me. I am free."
Act 2, Blooming and Blood. You are Bi Kidude. It is 2004, and you're home after yet another tour. The sound of the crowd, both silent rapture and raucous applause, still plays in your ear. You have $4,000 on hand, and it will only take you 10 days to lose every single cent. I imagine that this is how it happened. Day 1, a knock on the door. Wants to do knock sound? Whenever you hear a knock on the door, just knock. A knock on the door. Oh, look, they need medicine. They thought you were dead, and when you arrived home, you found a crowd chanting, "Amefufuka! Amefufuka!" This is familiar. It's not the first time you have risen. A knock on the door and they need medicine. So of course you give. Day 2, a knock on the door. A wedding. But how do you even count $4,000 when you still remember the rupee? You were born not too long after the Saudi Riyal was replaced in 1908. A year, 2, maybe 5, no one quite knows. And in your lifetime, you have seen currencies come and go. The East African shilling, the Tanzanian shilling. In your tours, you met new currencies, dollars, pounds, euros, more, and wait, is that a real again? You know money comes and goes. They are at your door and there's a wedding. So, of course you give. Day 3, a knock on the door. Oh, it's your neighbors. You are because they are. You always welcome them in. They're at your door and they are hungry. Of course you give. Day 4, a knock on the door. Oh, a young woman. You remember her. Now, she was an especially attentive learner of Unyago. She was eager and joyful. And you remember how the girls used to make fun of how tiny you are with that big drum between your legs and even that cigarette dangling from between your fingertips. But they always listened. This maybe was your favorite time. Initiation, just for women. You are their BB, you are their B. You even remember, yeah, you remember that. And this young woman looks at you, and you both start laughing, just thinking of all those secrets that you will never, ever tell. She is at your door, so of course you give. Day 5, a knock at the door. I mean, who can predict a roof falling in? Yes, you'll be only left with, I don't know, $800. And yes, it'll make it harder for you, but you remember, 1964. Who could predict a revolution? You remember the silence, the politics, the male branch bureaucrats who took over the clubs. They controlled where you could travel, practice, or perform after decades of women controlling Taarab across Zanzibar. You almost disappeared until a knock on the door in the 80s. Mariam Hamdani. You always had your voice. She just helped remind the world. Who can predict a roof falling in? Of course you give. Day 6. The evil eye. Of course you give. Day 7. Who can predict not singing? In 2005, you will win the Womax Awards and thousands of dollars. You, who are so unconcerned with wealth, will be trapped by it. In 2013, the facts and the story will become slippery. In one version, Baraka Wale Baraka will find you, his aunt, his same shangazi, who's toured the whole world and made millions of shillings lying sick and destitute in a decrepit home. Oh, he will take you in to care for you. You're too sick yourself. You can't see the x-rays. Na sukari imepanda pia, like you, and you have no children of your own. No, he will protect you. You must think of the future. You must rest. But, hey, care is expensive. Where's all the money you made? He will get on the news to demand that you get what you deserve. Those people at Sauti za Busara, who hold your income, your royalties, must give you your money back. Yes, through him, but so that he can take care of you. But in another version, you will be stolen. Baraka will hide you away. And those that love you can't reach you. They will all swear they did not take a single cent, despite the rumors. Mariam Hamdani, the same old dear friend, has only dreamt of your success. Omar Kidude, your neighbor, says all he ever did was take care of you. Fatma Juma, your travel companion, has seen the world with you, has sang by your side. Yusuf Mahmood, a founder of Sauti za Busara, is the one who witnessed the money, that $3,000 or $4,000 disappear in just 10 days because of how generous you are. Sauti za Busara, which keeps your money in trust, which is a musical home, is even ready to give up the funds that they hold. But to give them to who? Baraka. Or to every other hanger-on who claims they care for you, but only when you have money. Now, I am sure there are other versions, but in every version, in all the facts, in all the slippery stories, the truth remains unchanged. April 17th, 2013 will be the official day of your death, but you know better. You have always known better. When you stop singing, you stop living. But we jumped a bit. We jumped ahead. You don't know this yet. It is still 2004, and you only have a few dollars left in your pocket, and there's a knock on the door, so of course you give. Day 8. Ugh, no one knocks. You sing to yourself in a deep squat, you're making wanja, but the neighbors can't help but quiet down to listen. Subhanallah. She's always had her voice. Of course she sings. Day 9. Children, where are the children? Children. They're just laughing and you always have just enough left for the saka sweet for them, you know? And of course, first you snap in that way that you do, equal warning and embrace. You can't help it. You're a teacher. Alaminadura, Kijiti, Yalaiti, and so many others are all lessons. You teach in interviews. You warn that you cannot sing if you're drunk. A drink or 2, fine, maybe 3. But, no more. And never more than you can handle. You teach loving yourself in your entirety, in your complexity. You teach the value of breath. You teach that singing is breath. Plus, children are an attentive audience, and you do love the stage, so of course you sing. Day 10. So all the money is gone. Who cares? Who says you have nothing left to give and you still have your voice? Shukran lillah. You welcome them in, and you sing.
Act 3. Masks and truth. Fatuma binti Baraka, queen of Taarab, Unyago teacher, famed musician, woman who traversed all of Tanzania, who sings without a speaker, whose voice carries, who lived to over a century, cosmetologist, percussionist, herbalist, sexologist, singer, woman with 5 dots for a key, multi-award-winning musician, multi-instrumentalist. Imagine if you are tired of hearing the title, sorry. This is what putting respect on someone's name looks like. the oldest touring singer in the world, the diva of Zanzibari music, cultural icon, legend, badass, brazen, Kidude. Say it with me. Bi Kidude. This is the climax. You're listening to Radio Zanzibar. It's Friday, 21st of July. It's 6 o'clock, and here's today's top news story again. Zanzibar's most famous musician, Madam Fatma Baraka, also known as Bi Kidude, was yesterday refused admission into the House of Representatives, where a politician had called for her to retire from performing because of her age. Okay, yes, that's still my voice, but that was the broadcast. Imagine. After a whole life, someone decided to attempt, to try, to tell Bi Kidude what to do with it. Friends, do you see how the patriarchy is harmful to you? Do you? Imagine the patriarchy made you think you could speak about Bi Kidude like that. Imagine it made you believe you had the right to govern her life. Imagine it taught you that you could speak about your bibi anyhowly. He? Crimson, scarlet, stunner, blood, brick, bright, fiery, hot, rich, daring, dirt, aggressive, amorous, unapologetic, passionate, paprika, mabuyu, achari, red. The world has made a practice of interrupting black women, and Bi Kidude's life was constantly interrupted. But Bi Kidude sang uninterrupted. She never needed a microphone. Naimba mi bila speaker. La mdomo mimi naweza kuimba bila speaker, she would say. So when word reached Bi Kidude of the politician attempting to govern her life, she smirked. The House of Representatives wasn't so far. She could walk there, deal with this politician, and be back home in time to enjoy the hot ugali she was cooking. And she did. Listen, me, I haven't tasted the air that lingers when Muhogo wa Jangombe begins to play and everyone knows the lyrics. The udi drew her in. Then the violin, dumbaki, mirwas, ganuni, my God. I haven't felt the air shift into alignment when Bi Kidude stepped onto a stage. Haven't felt my body swayed by her mystical energy carrying you into her world. But I know enough to know this tiny figure was a legend. I do my best to imagine her. I close my eyes and all these images swirl in my mind. I see her as clearly as I do my grandmother, latching onto gorgeous descriptions by adoring fans. Ndinda Kyoko's writing pulls me out of the dreams I have of her and thrusts me into the imaginings of another African woman, seeking a sliver of strength from her ungovernable energy. Her presence, unmistakable and unavoidable. Her voice, unconcerned with amplification, but for the strength of her belly. Her body, frame and size, minute deception. Her hands, firm, steady. Her eyes, cheeky, questioning. Her voice, freedom incarnate. It is euphoria. This is Bi Kidude. That is what they were trying to interrupt. But for Bi Kidude, it was simple. She interrupted them. Bi Kidude was ready to face the politician calling for her to retire. She went to the House of Representatives and they denied her admission. They refused to let her in. So now, outside the same House of Representatives, of course there were people, because of course they heard and of course they wanted to know what's going on. It is reported that Bi Kidude grabbed a journalist by the scruff of his neck and threatened to break him into pieces. Tell them they should do their job and let her do hers. For Bi Kidude, it was simple. Her soul knew what to do.
And that was a reading of an unreleased episode of the Brazen podcast. We're so grateful. You can clap.
Okay, you can clap.
Thank you. We're so grateful to everyone who helped bring this podcast to life.
So the episode exists. It's recorded, mastered. It just sits in a drive somewhere because we have to do things like figure out rights. But, my legals and my things. But the existing episode was recorded at Zaki Kwetu Productions and produced by Wambui Washiori. All of these are brilliant people. If I say our job and just write down the name if you need them, they're all amazing. With visuals by Aworo Nyango and theme music by Wanja Wohoro. And thank you to our brilliant experts, fact-checking consultant Miriam Wakini Njogu and cultural consultant Historia.
And thank you to Nasra Bwana, Alicia Decker, Corey Decker, Mae Francis, Eman Himid, Andy Jones, Judy Kibinge, Maha Marwan, it takes a village, Aida Holinambi, Paxson Gugi, Aisha Onsando, Sally Cham, ushuru.co.ke because taxes must be paid all the time. Our moms and, of course, the Brazen Sisterhood who were part of the first show that we staged together ever here, actually, at the National Theatre in the main stage, which I can see some people who are part of it. Hello, Akini. The podcast is supported by the African Feminist Initiative and is created and produced by the LAM Sisterhood, made up of me, Laura,
Me, Mora.
And me, Alea.
and that's it.
Thank you.
Sorry, me, I can bask in applause and compliments all day. Don't think I will stop it.
Meanwhile, I'm like, let's move along.
No, it's fine. So thank you so much, everybody who's attended. What we'll do is we'll ask, each of us has a question for the others, as to open up the kind of conversation portion. And then after that, it's open Q&A to everybody in the audience. I did that so I can hand it over to one of you to ask the first question. So,
Look at them looking at me like this.
expert,
have
brilliant
questions.
moderator and host.
I have questions.
Multiple.
I do. I have multiple. I'm
Oh.
always prepared.
Okay.
Hang on. Let me find them. Oh, it's in my phone. Oh,
Yeah, you're
Where
being
is my
told your
I'm
notebook
not
is
prepared.
cute.
My notebook is cute, isn't it? It's actually from Zanzibar. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So now I wrote my questions in my phone, which who knows where it is. So I'm just gonna make it up right now. Okay. That's okay. I'm gonna go with the spirit.
Okay.
A lot of what we do, I think we say, particularly in the brazen universe, we kind of explore the gaps between kind of fact and imagination and memory. And I want to know where you go to access memory. And when you think about memory, to expand the idea of memory as just your own memory, to kind of memories that exist before you, beyond you, out of your cognitive. Where do you go?
The problem with working with like smart people, I was like, damn, that's a great question. Wow. Memory.
And stories.
And where do you go for memory? I think I make I don't hide at all that every single thing I write is deeply subjective. Like I have an opinion and I'm saying it. Like there's no kind of pretense that this isn't deeply personal to me, even when it's very external. And so I think where I go for memory, of course, the traditional kind of just what you think about, the things you read, reading other people's writing is like probably my strongest access point into memories. But I think what I've been thinking about a lot more recently is what especially coming from the talk of the previous talk around nature in writing. Like what are the ways in which memories are held that just aren't in your body? I think is what I'm really engaging with in the moment. So like, what is it that like? I went to visit with Mante, who's also a brilliant storyteller. We went to walk around Nairobi Dam for a thing I'm working on, and it was just so fascinating, like looking at this huge water body, seeing, and you could see where the path of what might have been part of the original river. Then you could also see like the culverts that were built on top. You could see how the plant life shifted from one side to the other. You could see the soap bubbles that were forming that tells you it's chemical water, but it also kind of looked like a portal to another world. It was very odd. And all of that, and I grew up near the dam. Like Nairobi Dam was my home for when I was a kid. So having the memories of what I remember then, and then seeing the dam now, and seeing all the ways it's the same and what's different, just I think everything holds memory in one way, shape, or form. And so I'm starting to be a bit more in tune, or trying to be a bit more in tune with the things that are not just in and of me, that hold memories themselves, and trying to find ways to listen to those.
Yum. I should have gone before you.
I had to try. It was such a good question.
I mean, I think I'd like to pull on what you're speaking about from like water, to think about how much water exists in us and passes through so many places. But for me, where I go to is my body. To find the place where, I know with Bi Kidude specifically, we spent about a month researching her story, reading about her, watching videos about her, listening to her music, just reflecting on where in my body am I feeling her music, what exists in those parts of our bodies, because our bodies hold so much emotion and trauma and joy and a whole spectrum of feelings, and what that's bringing up for me, and how that pulls me closer to the story, and what's true and feels right to go down the path of. Yeah.
As you're talking, you have to ask the next question so I can think of mine.
Actually, yeah, my question was going to be on nature and form. So we're here reflecting on the sea as history, and we're all ocean lovers, some more than others. And I'm curious about how nature informs how you approach form as well, because we're also promiscuous creatives who play with media, from like film to audio stories to stage plays. Yeah.
I'm obsessed with structure, which Laura and Maura now know. I think I need to kind of understand the materiality of something so that I can understand how it behaves. So if you liken it to making jewelry and working with brass, like the different gauges of brass will let you know how much you can twist it before it breaks. And I think about story and form in a similar way. And one of the things I'm writing is a musical, and it's set at the coast by the ocean. And spending time there when I was writing, really kind of being present to the nature and movement of the ocean showed me how, for example, the way in which the tide builds, and the story the musical is about, it's a brown-black love story where a taboo kiss just throws everything out in the open, and over the course of the night, all these deep prejudices are revealed and have to be confronted. And this, watching the tide and the waves start to rise, and this buildup of tension, and there's an inevitability about it, and then there's a crash, and it just freaking decimates everything, and then it recedes again. And as it recedes, the things that it leaves, behind on the wake, and what's left behind, and things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to see if it were not for the wave that receded. And the ways in which, when you walk on the sand and it's wet, and then depending on how wet it is, it leaves prints, and then the prints disappear. And like how sometimes tenderness is a beckoning ocean frothing at your toes and giving you little kisses. And so I think I really derive deep inspiration from nature when it comes to form. And it's one of the places that I go to often when I am looking for structure, whether it's a blog post or a brazen episode or a stage play. Nature as form gives me or shows me form in my writing. Yeah. That's a really lovely question. Thank you.
Wow, that was wow. Okay, wow. Okay, my friends are smart. So mine very private. So she's so much more interesting. I love kids so much. I just see a child and my brain short circuits. So I think for me, nature and writing. Now, I am a Nairobi girl. I have not met a plant I can't kill. Like, I just, it's not, I'm great with animals. Like, my toxic trait is I think all dogs will be my best friend. But, like, all of them. But it's, because they are. It's just science. But I think what I'm interested in this moment is, I think the two areas where nature connects, one is a very direct kind of technique thing of, if you don't know what to write, just look outside and write that. Like, if you're stuck, just like try and describe a leaf for a second and see what it unlocks in your mind. Just as a technique, there's just so much that's available to you to just unlock things. On the other side, I think one of the things I'm interested in now is the idea, there's a way that people talk about themselves as if you're separate from nature, or even about infrastructure like it's separate from nature. We're all nature. Like all of us, even this building is now officially part of nature because it is in the natural world. So like, what does that mean when you reject that separation and you recognize that you are not, even in conversation with or anything, you're not separate from, you're literally nature yourself. And the things you build are nature too. And so it is in our nature to build, So what does that mean when you look at cities and being a person and reject the concept that you're separate from anything? And how does that allow you to see yourselves in the city? So even like with the protest movement going on, so much of it makes more sense when you think about how the natural kind of ebbs and flows of energy. Then that's like, oh, that aligns with how nature moves, and it doesn't feel as odd in the ways that things swell down and die down and swell up again. So that, like, I think right this second, ask me this question again tomorrow, but right this second, the thing I'm interested in is that rejecting the distinction of us or our beings or our making as separate from nature itself. Yeah.
Thank you both.
Did it. I caught up. So I'll throw a last question and then we'll open for the audience. I'll try and keep it lightish. So we work together a lot. We write separately. We write together. And one of the things I tend to end up doing is a lot of editing. So on a very kind of practical, technical level, what do you, because there was a lot of writers and a lot of the audience I realized asked some technical questions. I'm like, if somebody leaves with a tip, that'll be great. What do you find in editing your work as like, yay, this is the best part about editing, and this is the part I hate?
I'll go first because I've learned. I think, okay, so there's a few things, editing specifically. So my foray, my entry into writing was poetry, which I love so much. I love because I can do it out loud and hear how it sounds coming off my mouth, my tongue. And I had this literature teacher who I'd sent him my poem, and he was like, I tend to be wordy. He was like, okay, just remove all the ats and the thes and the ahs and all of that, all the little connection words and the ands, and read it out loud and only put back the ones that you really, really need. And that was such a simple, technical hint that, thank you, interruption, that felt really good to play with, especially for me, a verbose person. I think something that I love doing is reading the piece out loud, just hearing how it sounds, especially in my voice. If I find myself stumbling, then I'm probably not being honest. I think that's one of our microphones. And if there's something that doesn't feel right coming out of my mouth, I adjust it and try to find what feels good on my tongue.
I love when I love the writing, which actually is not that unusual. I'm not one of those writers who cringes and hates what I actually am often delighted. And I think that's kind of cool. I love when I'm editing, I love when I find pattern and repetition because I'm so drawn to that. When I can see those things, I'm like, ooh, this is delicious. And glimmers, you know. The thing I really don't like when I'm editing myself is when I get stuck because of sense making. I still really grapple with that. Mora is the best editor I've ever worked with, and I would say really one of the best on the continent. Truly, and I'm not being hyperbolic, if that's how you pronounce it. And one of the things, Mora, you generally challenge me to do is I get kind of swept away in the beauty of the writing, and she's like, but Alea, what's actually happening? And I'm like, damn it.
And she swears at me and leaves the room.
And then I have to feel my feelings for days and then come back and be like, you were right. I was going to lose them and they were not going to be able to follow me to where I'm going. But for me, like, sense sometimes interrupts. And I'm still kind of trying to figure my way through that, which is where I think poetry comes with freedom, in a way. But I think, I've answered the question. What about y'all?
Okay, do we have a roaming mic? Oh, we have roaming mics.
Amazing.
Three at a time. Great, I have pen and paper here. Yeah, 3 at a time.
Is that too much?
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So we'll take the 1 question, 2 and 3, and then answer those, and then if there's time, we'll do another round of questions. So question 1.
Hello.
Hello. Fabulous. Ooh. Greetings.
Greetings.
Hello, people of Ukumbi Mdogo. Hi, friends. I don't feel like standing, which is why I just said hi instead. I'm a huge fan of the sisterhood. I'm a huge fan of the sistren individually and together. And I have 2 questions flowing from that. The first one, we don't have to answer right now. It's more of a proposal. Can I interview folks, please? Can I sit down with you all and like have an interview of a moment? Yes. Hell yeah?
Yes.
Hell yeah. Thank you. And then now this one you also don't have to answer too deeply because now we have a conversation that we're going to have. But I'm curious about the group dynamic and what it is like to create in group how, yeah, man, like, are there structures that you've come to help energize each other? What is it like in the ebbs and the flows of each other's energy? How do you navigate your individual personhood and then your collective personhood together?
Yum.
Yeah. Is there ever a time that you just don't want to see each other? And
Yes.
then,
Yes.
and how do you move? And what do you do at that point? Do you leave the WhatsApp group? Do you like schedule, like postpone
I
the
block and
meeting?
report them. No,
I
I'm
love
joking,
it.
I'm joking,
I love it. Yeah.
Thank you
How
for
do you
the
how do you
question.
navigate moments like that, and also moments of conflict if
Yeah.
you'd like to get into that? But again,
Okay.
we will talk.
Yay.
And I'm so grateful. Thank
No,
you.
Thank you for that.
Thank
Let's
you.
take the next question as well. That's a really good question. There's essays. And next question, hands. Oh, going once? Any other questions? Going once, going twice?
Okay, 1, 2.
1 and 2. Or there and there. We'll just take all 3 questions at once. So him and then her.
Hi. I think a lot of good writing that I've personally read comes from a place of empathy and understanding. And empathy obviously requires relatability. As storytellers, I'm sure that you come across characters that are not very familiar. So like, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a storyteller, I can probably relate very closely to a child of immigrants because that's what I am, and I can maybe relate to someone who works on Wall Street, because I work in finance, let's say, and then I can not relate to an expectant mother at all, right? But as storytellers, you come across all kinds of characters. What's your process to relate to them, to do justice to the story?
Thank you. That's a really good question. The last one.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for this wonderful snippet. I think I wanted to ask you about the non-writing moments. I read an article about it the other day, a newsletter, and I sent it to Laura actually, about, like, it was written by a professional writer and therapist, and she was just reflecting about how it was a burden for her sometimes to turn everything she experiences into something writable, like something that, and not only writable, because for her she kind of finds epiphanies all the time, right? And that's what people want from the newsletter. So she was just like saying, like, how is it nice to also just sit and observe and not have to turn everything into writing? And I'm saying this in a room that probably many of us are writers, so it's the exception, right? But I'm just wondering how, if you find that need, maybe you don't, but if you do, how do you open those windows? Because you are professional writers, and how do you open windows of non-writing and just being, and get energy from that to go back to writing afterwards, probably?
Yay, thank you. So I wanted to make sure I got at least 3 questions in case time runs out, so we didn't drag on forever with one. So first question is group dynamics. Group dynamics, yeah, I mean, you're all people. I think if you're going to work together, like, just very frank, like, in terms of if you're going to work with somebody, presumably at some point, especially if it's a long-term relationship, you're going to have conflict in the same way you will with your family, with your friends, with your partner or partners, with whoever else. If you're going to engage in a long-term relationship with anyone, you're going to have moments of conflict. I think the things that hold us down, especially creatively, is a deep fundamental respect of each other's craft and artistry, and a trust that if somebody's saying something that's contradictory to you, they're not trying to hurt you, or they're not trying to even do something that's against you in any way, shape, or form. They're just as interested and as invested in making the work that you're trying to make amazing. So often the conflict isn't really a conflict. It's often just, in terms of the work itself, it's mostly just you're seeing, I'm holding the elephant by the tail and you're holding it by the trunk. But maybe if all of us sit together, we might be able to draw an elephant. Like that, and so you just kind of have to hold that energy, and that deep trust and fundamental respect of each other, I think, is a foundational part of why we ended up working well for so long. But I'll hand over.
I think the other, she's spoken to most of your question, but the other thing that you asked was about the individual versus the group. I think in our coming together, we wrote that play that I mentioned that we staged at K&T, Brazen, and we were, as Alea would say, we were in each other's armpits for about 9 months. So working together in that way meant that every time we're together, there is that we function in that way. That's our foundation. in terms of the individual, I think finding room to go off and be your own type of artist is very, very important. In the beginnings of our making together, it's been important to build that foundation together. So we haven't necessarily had so much of that, I'd say, in the past 5 years. I think now we're starting to feel like we can split off and explore other things. And then obviously we're at different points in our career, so that means different things to each of us. But mostly making room for one another. If you're really drawn to something and you want to go for it, you lip sync for your darling, as we would say in the RuPaul Drag Race type of way. And we make
That's a real
space for one another to go off and be ourselves. Yeah.
And I think maybe to add is one of the things that we've cultivated, which I deeply appreciate, is always space to show up how we are with whatever's going on in life. Because if we're doing this together, we're doing it together in all the ways that we are. And because not only does life, but like, you know, you change also. And I think that's one of the things that working away from each other, but together, like during the COVID period, really taught us is sometimes showing up for each other is just pressing join Zoom meeting and then just sitting. And that in itself does so much work. And the other thing too is like knowing that when one person needs to tap out, the person needs to tap out, and you know the other two will make space always. So when we come to this, we're not just coming to this as 3 co-founders or 3 writers, but as 3 human beings who really just like love doing the thing and want to find ways to keep doing the thing for as long as the thing would like to be keep being done by us. Okay, so
for your
question
question.
number 2 was how
Empathy with
process and actually.
No, yeah.
So this is an interesting, so the question was, what's your process to relate to the character and access them? And I was thinking as you were asking the question about what you just heard, the Brazen podcast pilot, because I think that's a really interesting example. So the Brazen podcast, right? So the Brazen podcast is structured in 3 acts, and each one of us write a portion of Bi Kidude's story. We wrote, or in this episode, we wrote this in 2020?
No, 19?
2019? No, COVID was already underway.
When we were writing?
2020.
It was
yeah,
2020.
yeah. I hate that that's how I remember things, but and I think what's really interesting is you have one woman's life, which, let's be honest, like I said, has been told so many ways by so many different people. And you heard 3 kind of renderings, 3 ways of accessing the same woman. Each of us had the same set of research. And when we're reading it now, like many years later, I'm so intrigued by the things that each one of us connected to through her story. And I think it's also very telling where we were in our lives in that moment. I suspect if you asked us to write Bi Kidude's story again now, I wonder if we would have different access points to it because we are now in different places. So I think each writer has a different way, but like for me, I only know how to access something through myself, maybe partly because I'm primarily, or my beginning was a nonfiction writer, and I suffer from that imposter thing of like, how dare you write someone who you're so far removed from? Who do you don't, you know, I can't even say it out loud. So finding my way is always like, how do I connect to this person? What's the thing that, for me in that moment, for this idea that Bi Kidude sang for over 100 years, like following the thing that made her happy, like feeling free, like I was craving that so much in my life in that moment. And so that's the way in which she moved through me.
Yeah, to add to the question on empathy, 100% agree. We have structurally what we did for that episode is it's shocking for a writer how many graphs I draw, but we mapped out the plot of the episode, like the overall arcing plot into the 3 acts, and we each took 1 act to kind of make sure that it was like cohesive, but we each had our own sections to write. But overall, there's 2 ways to answer that question. So I think as a reader, I had no business. The first thing I thought was like, I had no business relating to Jessica and Elizabeth Wakefield in Sweet Valley Gang Gang. No business. What am I, a blonde 16-year-old in, I don't know, Wyoming, wherever they are? I don't know. But like, I was about it because ultimately that was a story about being an adolescent girl. And I was an adolescent girl. So I found a connection point. I think readers can find connections to anything. And I'm a big fan of sci-fi and fantasy fiction and speculative. That's probably my favorite genre. And like you're an alien monster that like only drinks the tears of cows. Dope, I'm in. What else is gonna happen? Like I think you can connect to anything if you find the emotional connection point, you'll connect to it. And I think the flip side as an author, I always think, and it's something I go on about a lot, is that like the more deeply personal and specific your people are, even if it is the cow tear eating alien, the more specific and personal and deliberate you get in that character creation, the more people will connect. Specificity increases connection and makes it more universal, I think, fundamentally. So the idea of trying to write a character who is everything will fail because people are like, it's generic. Like, this is now speaking as an editor, it's like, it'll just feel like every other person. But the moment that now I'm obsessed with this cow tear eating alien. But the moment that cow tear eating alien is there, like, the cows on my home planet are all gone. You're like, oh no, but what are they gonna eat? You know, like the moment you get specific, you just create connection, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very like I want to go down the cow tear eating alien rabbit hole. I tend to open 5,000 tabs and then go down all those 5,000 tabs paths. I follow my curiosity, and I think that's how I do the character justice, is by staying honest and gravitating towards the things that I'm truly interested in. Because if I don't, then I'm lying, and it falls flat and it's fake. So I think that's the only part of your question that I wanted to touch on, because they've spoken on the rest so beautifully. Now to our final question. Wow. Speed.
How to open windows of non-writing? Was that the question?
Yeah, it was. And the need.
Oh, things that are not about the writing. Yeah. I think it's fundamental. I really do. I think especially because one of the challenges I've faced is by making my favorite thing my job, it became a job. And finding ways to stay in love with it became necessary and grows more necessary. So part of the ways, and this is something I've been working on more recently, to be honest, is that understanding that like I really, the thing I love most in the world outside of my nephews is story. Like, in its story lover is probably the best descriptor for me. It just doesn't fit LinkedIn that well. So like, you know, whatever you need to call me, then call me that instead. But like, because of that, I'm now trying to find ways of like, what are the other ways I engage with story that actually aren't about me making it about writing? Is it through playing games? Is it like just like really going on deep Reddit threads around the boys to understand what's going on with those characters? Like, what are the other ways I can engage with story that aren't about me producing an output? And that I think allows me to fall back in love with the writing for when it is time for me to make an output, when it is tied to the check that I need to use to pay for my tokens. So like, I can still find the joy because I've made sure that the thing that I've said recently to somebody was, I'm trying to rebuild the pathways in my brain that connect storytelling and joy, because I think it became too connected to capitalism. So I'm trying to work backwards to make it happy again. Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, as is always the case. Always.
Always. Yeah.
It's so wonderful. I'm always writing even when I'm not writing. But I've come to learn that for myself, writing doesn't only mean when my pen is to page or fingers are to keyboard. So even if I'm making jewelry or playing with my sunshines or watching Love Island, all 56 episodes of each season in each country. I like writing romances, so that's research. I've just accepted that about myself, and instead of fighting it, I just let my brain do the thing that my brain wants to do. And also, I've come to learn that, like, big ideas take time. So if things are going to take time, then they're also going to need time to work away at things. And so this musical that I've been writing, we're like, I think 8 years in now. And even as I'm sitting here, there's a part of my brain that's absolutely fidgeting around in the back. But yes to joy, and to also stories separate from capitalism.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, I'm a reluctant writer. If you ask me if I'm a writer tomorrow, I'll probably say no. We fight about me calling myself a writer often. I hate it. It is the worst thing that I do. I'd rather somebody else writes it and I stand on stage and I say those words. I love that so much more. But there is a part of my soul that is nourished by writing once I get through all the torment. And I think then, to answer your question, when I am struggling with writing something, it's running away, literally like throwing everything away and trying to find something that is completely the opposite of that, which is normally moving, being in my body, listening to music, doing nonsense things, sitting and staring at the sky. I love that question so much because I do enjoy nothingness. And I think that's the greatest solution to the torment of writing.
Wow. Nothingness is there?
I've forgotten.
Is the best solution to the torment of writing. Hey, somebody put
Just
it on a
arrived
t-shirt.
fully formed.
And she says she's not a writer.
I'm not a writer.
You see why we fight with her? And that's the end.
That's it.
I think that's it. That's our time.
I would like to say one thing. If you enjoyed the story of Bi Kidude and you have little ones in your life, we have a children's podcast called Brazen, Kabrazen. And so
Hiya.
Hiyo.
Hiya, hiya.
Hiyo.
Ooh, harmonies, okay.
Yay. And Bi Kidude's story is there, the Cabrazen version of it, as well as lots of other stories of brazen African women for your little ones.
In English and Kiswahili.
Indeed, indeed. Cabrazen.com. Thank you. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
so
all
much for
so
being so
much.
warm.
Thank you so much.